Hey everyone, it's Jenny at JC Cards and I'm super excited to be joining you today to showcase the first monthly painter flower from Altenew. It is the poppy. And if you subscribe to this is a new offering from Altenew, you will get a discount on this gorgeous stamp set. Each month these are going to be released featuring beautiful floral line art designs that are perfect for painting or colouring with your favourite mediums. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I made this card. I also created one other card with this stamp set. The link to my blog post is in the description box below, and it's actually part of a blog hop celebrating this month's release. And before I show you how we made the card, let me give you a quick close-up look at the insert. It has a couple of ideas on how you can use this flower, and I've seen a sneaky peek of some of the other cards created by the wonderful designers in the hop, and you are going to be blown away by what they came up with. It's a simple line art design. It's perfect for colouring, adding shading if you're advanced at colouring, or just playing around with watercolour like I've done today. I'm using the Watercolor Brush Markers, the Tropical Fiesta set by Altenew, and I'm going to list all of the colours I used and the supplies down in the description box below. To start off with, I've got an A2 size panel of hot press watercolour cardstock, and I'm going to be inking up the flower using my MISTI with some embossing ink. I have treated the cardstock with a powder tool just to make sure I don't get any embossing powder sticking where I don't want it, and then I'm going to heat emboss it with a superfine white embossing powder. I've positioned the flower just off the edge of the panel because I'm looking for this to come in from the left, and in order to be able to kind of get some colour down before I start painting, I'm going to ink blend a little bit of Altenew's Pale Mauve just over the embossed flower. I find that sometimes when you're faced with a blank panel, or semi-blank as it were, it's a bit daunting, so adding that little bit of colour just around the flower helps kind of get my mojo working. So I've zoomed in here and I'm going to give you a real-time close-up look at how I'm colouring these petals. By no means am I going for hyper-realistic here. I'm going for relatively messy. You'll see kind of the look I'm going for as we progress. And to start off with, I'm using the purple wine marker, and I've first off applied clean clear water all over the petal, and then I'm just dropping in some of that marker direct to paper in the bottom corner and then pulling it out with my water brush. I've done that for all of the petals, and then I'm coming in with some turquoise, and the turquoise over the top of the purple wine gives a kind of really deep, dark purple colour, and I'm adding that down into the corners just to add some contrast. You'll see that the colour I'm going for, it's not reminiscent of poppies. I wanted to have something really bright and bold and a little bit different for my image, so I'm choosing colours that you wouldn't necessarily immediately think of for a poppy. And that's the fun thing with these images, you can paint them however you like. There's lots of open space and lots of opportunities to try new things. I actually hadn't at this point properly used the watercolour brush markers from Altenew, so what you're seeing here is one of my first attempts at using them. And a couple of tips I have for newbies to these brush markers is use your water brush to pull out ink pretty quickly after you've laid it down to get the colour moving. If you want the ink to stay dark, or the ink in the marker to stay dark and not move around too much, you can leave it to dry a little bit longer, and it's actually a little bit harder to get moving then with the water brush. It doesn't easily move around like traditional watercolours, and that can be a benefit when you're trying to create contrast. I've added some splatters with the brush marker, just scribbled it on my craft mat, mixed it with a little bit of water and then flicked it. And then I'm coming in with some Desert Night, which is a really pretty kind of dark blue colour, and I'm going to colour the leaves in this dark blue colour. I do mix it with a little bit of Lava Rock from the same set, that's kind of a brown colour, just to add that depth into the centre of the leaves, and I'm just picking it up from my craft mat and scribbling it in with a water brush. So you can see I'm not being too careful, I'm not looking to get intricate details or add hyper-realistic kind of contrast on the petals. I wanted to play around with my markers, play around with this image, and the best thing about using heat embossing with watercolor is it resists that embossing. The embossing resists the paint, and it's really easy to stay within the lines. As I go along, I'm adding some more splatters, and then I'm going to add some shadow just to add a little bit more depth and dimension with a heavily watered down Desert Night picked up from my craft mat. So I'm adding it right into the edges where it meets the leaves and along the stem, and then pulling it out with lots of water. Now you'll see I'm coming in with lots of extra water. I'm squeezing my water brush here, so hard to be able to tell, but I'm really squeezing it and getting that water flowing. It's picking up some of that ink blended ink, some of the splatters. They have dried a little bit, so you get that crispness of the splatters, but it also pulls out some of the colour. And if I needed to, I'm picking up a tiny bit of colour off the craft mat, but really I want to keep this pretty light and pale. And then taking a tip from my dear friend Eram, I wanted to have a try at creating a bit of her drippy splatter background. I know she typically does it first, and it was a bit of a spur of the moment thing for me, but just adding some splatters by squirting the brush and letting the panel drip. I came in again with a bit of watered down Desert Night. It was a bit too strong, so I just dabbed it off with a paper towel. And then coming back in directly with the marker and adding yet some more contrast. You'll see I'm building up the layers here. I really want to get that depth of colour and give this a really kind of messy feel, almost like a paint explosion. Given that this is the first painter flower from Altenew, I really wanted to make it known that I was using paint on this. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. And I'm going to now add, once it's dried, some splatters with the Altenew Gold spray. So I've shaken it up. I don't really want it going over the flower itself while I've spent all that time adding the layers in, but I do want to add to the messiness of the background with a bit of gold. So I'm just taking a bit of scrap paper here, holding it over my flower roughly rather than spending time trimming out a mask, and then adding some gold splatters. And here's a quick close-up. It's not quite dried yet, but you can see it just adds a little bit of subtle shimmer to that background. Once it's dried, I'm going to use one of the sentiments, the bold sentiments from the stamp set. There's a really great selection of sentiments, both large solid ones and some smaller kind of strip sentiments. So I'm going to go in with a happy birthday, and the sketchy feel, the sketchy kind of brush marker type style of the sentiments font, I kind of thought went really well with the messy approach I've taken to colouring in the poppy. And then I'm going to add a sub-sentiment, just heat embossed in white on some black cardstock and popped up on a bit of foam tape. And that pretty much finishes my card. I'm going to adhere it down onto a white note card. I like to use super strong double-sided adhesive for this, just because it flattens out the panel. I did use quite a lot of water, so there was a fair amount of warping, and that helps to keep it flat. And if yours has warped a lot, you can always put it under a pile of books. I trimmed it down slightly just to create a white border around the edge, and that finishes the card. Be sure to check out my blog post that goes with this video down in the description box below. It will link to the other stops on the hop and see what all the other designers came up with. If this is your first time visiting my channel, welcome. I'd love it if you'd subscribe, and here's a couple of other videos you might enjoy. I've got tons on my channel, and thanks for visiting. Have a wonderful day. Bye.